Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and here's a big one you've all been waiting for. It's time we talk about the best albums and songs from the mid-year of 2019. So for one of the first times when I'm making this sort of mid-year retrospective, I have to introduce a major caveat. I'm putting together this list before listening to the long-awaited return collaboration between Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. Make no mistakes, I really want to hear it, and I'll probably get a ton of praise from me given how much I loved Pinata back in 2014. But it's also going to be a project I will need some time to process, and I don't want to rush a review before the mid-year and risk delays. So if you're wondering why that's not on this list, that's why. But it's also important to highlight that even if that album is as amazing as I hope it'll be, it would face some stiff competition this year too. I highlighted last year how even despite a pretty reasonable spread of albums, it was pretty easy to put things in position, and I wanted to say it would be the same thing here until I took a look at how many truly stunning albums we've got in the first half of 2019. Country has delivered in spades. Underground hip-hop is firing on all cylinders. I've got solid cuts from rock and punk and metal, and even some pop and R&B have given me some choice selections. As such, this is one of those years where I had to make some painful cuts to whittle this list down, and just like last year, I have to stress, just because an album didn't make this mid-year list is no guarantee it won't make my year-end, or that positions won't evolve or change. Also, and I feel this is really important for me to emphasize, if you're expecting to see some big-name critical darlings here, well, suffice to say, 2019 has been a year where I'm flying down a very different path than a lot of mainstream critics. So if you're looking for certain albums, just go check to see if I've reviewed them. That's all I'm saying. And yet, given that this is the sixth one of these lists I've assembled, I've got 12 albums, 24 songs not otherwise on those albums, and let's get started with number 12. Not gonna lie, the fight for this slot was stiff, and I'll admit I'm even a little bit shocked that this was the album that won out. Mostly because a lot of this artist's work I need to be in a very specific mood to process and appreciate, and those kind of projects don't typically make my list. And I'm not sure if it says more about the year that I've had than for the first time this guy has made a list of mine, but the more I heard this, the more I'm convinced that it was worth it.
Fucking with the joystick, pretending I was really playing. Pretending I was really playing. Pretending I was really playing.
To me, Billy Woods has built a twofold reputation for himself. Impenetrability, and what you do understand tends to spook you a fair bit. Not so much horror, but his plain-spoken approach to the decaying fractures in mainstream society that most of us kind of want to gloss over for our own sanity. But when Kenny Segal gave him his most diverse and accessible set of production to date, Billy Woods reveals the emotive core and a slice of personal stakes that might have been long buried and then hit like a ton of bricks here. Not only did he deliver one of his best ever songs in a day, in a week, in a year, it showed a Billy Woods who might be comfortable in his own little spider holes, but is also willing to make a bit of space if you want to duck in there with him and listen to what he has to say. Moody, introspective, and forcing you to confront privilege and poverty in a way that is designed to strike some raw nerves. Nevertheless, it was exactly what I needed in 2019. Excellent stuff. Number 11. Not gonna lie, the fight for this spot was intense as well. It really was between two women in country. One was a pro who had delivered some of the best tearjerkers of her career with her best album in decades. The other between a relative no-name where I think I might have been the one to give her the most exposure. Now we'll be getting to both of them after a fashion on this list, but in the end, I gotta give props to the indie talent.
It's all a mystery, an untold story, a blank page waiting for a lie, a metronome just marking time.
If you're an indie country fan and you don't know who Alice Wallace is by this point, you gotta catch up. Not only is she one hell of a singer, and I'd argue she doesn't even flex her most impressive yodeling skills on this project, as a songwriter she has both a keen ear for nuance and the real hooks to back it up. More to the point, The Blue was a showcase of versatility, skipping from smoked out southern rock and soul to more acoustic country folk. And not only was she convincing in every lane she tried, the album's main meta-narrative was in chasing new experiences. It's the rare project that makes you want to root for its own success. And Alice Wallace is the sort of talent that is so absolutely convincing that she will get there and rip your heart out along the way. It's some phenomenal work, absolutely worth the spot that she claimed on this list. Number 10. You know, we're going to stick with the indie scene here, and we're actually considering an EP, one that I discovered on Bandcamp practically by accident. Not the only project of that ilk on this list, just so you know. But this is an act that has the presence and talent to be way bigger than they are, but also the writing that's guaranteed to make some people balk, and yet...
And yeah, I should have known better, but I swear it was better before.
Jetty Bones is the sort of emo act that in the current third wave of the genre, I am stunned we haven't heard more of, blending indie pop song structures and hooks with fiercely nuanced and emotionally rooted content that shows an arc of recovery that is so well structured and confrontational with its empathy. Even though it's just 6 songs, it sticks with you. And while Kelsey Galuzzo has a touch of that theatrical in a lot of her delivery, it's such a unique voice for this content and overloaded with raw charisma that you really can't ignore her. Let me stress that it's incredibly rare that I put EPs on these sorts of lists, and yet when it comes to thematic cohesion, melodic structure, and just attention to the fine details, you got an artist that is designed to get big. Hell, 10 to 15 years ago, I could have seen her laying claim in mainstream pop. She's got that sort of almost retro sound for it. Maybe it's just that sentiment that pulls me back to Hyphen again and again, but for this project, certainly worth it. And that full-length album, it cannot come fast enough. Great stuff. But before we move on, a couple songs from albums that did not make this list but absolutely deserve some attention. From the album Magnolia, Evangeline by Randy Houser.
With me, Evangeline.
From the album Tallies, Easy Enough by Tally. From the album Love Train 2, Lost in London by Ozion.
With a girl whose name I'm wondering.
From the album Remind Me Tomorrow, 17 by Sharon Van Etten.
Free. I used to be 17.
From the album Assume Form, featuring Andre 3000, Where's the Catch by James Blake.
There must be.
From the album Malibu Ken, Acid King by Aesop Rock and Tobacco.
Hold close to the highs and a white light. Hold close to the good you are drawn to. These woods are gonna disarm you.
From the album Ammo, Why You Gotta Kick Me When I'm Down by Bring Me the Horizon.
You better pray I don't get out this time around.
And from the album Moonglow, Lavender by Avantasia.
It's the world that's in between the cold and you.
And now back to our list, number 9. This was the album that actually grew on me the most in 2019, and I'm kind of not sure why. I know the hooks, they got most of the way there, but there was something just so Canadian about its brand of firepower, and yeah, was not gonna snub this one.
Sitting around and thinking all this morbid stuff. Like if anyone I slept with is dead. And
Not gonna lie, this album strikes a personal chord, if only because as someone who lives in downtown Toronto but was kind of moving here, the opening title track hits a sentiment on that second verse you cannot deny. But there's something so damn refreshing about how Pup not just roots its sound in the frenetic but anthemic Ontario punk scene, but how the content can hit the fine line between the specific and the universal, and a midlife crisis to anyone who overthinks their onset of adulthood. I want to say that Pup fits in the same pop-punk canon as the Wonder Years that aims to be just as catchy and earnest, but also a little bit older and more refined. But there's something still so ragtag and pugnacious about this project, where you can see them headlining festivals and then playing a dive bar in Kensington Market before drinking everyone under the table, and maybe a fight might happen too. And when it's this catchy, hell, if I only liked the closing track a little bit better, this would be higher on the list. Yeah, folks, fantastic stuff. You've already heard it, it's got a ton of critical acclaim, but it deserves it. Number 8. And you know what, we're actually staying Canadian for this next entry. Not quite as high on this list as I would prefer, mostly because it doesn't quite rock as much as I would prefer. But you know, when you write melodies this good, and when you have one of the best frontmen in modern pop rock...
Echoes of you, repeating from the beating of your heart, of your heart, of your heart now. You know.
At this point, Marianas Trench, they're in a class by themselves. They pivoted to making a mainstream accessible pop album, and they gave up a majority of their remaining edge for a coda to their last album, and yeah, they're still making this list. But frontman and songwriter Josh Ramsey has long held an uncanny knack for melodic structure and intensely nuanced lyrical songwriting that can still be catchy as all hell. And again, one of the best voices in mainstream music for sheer theatrical presence, range, and firepower. This is a man who saw the desaturated murk of mainstream pop, made the band's bleakest and darkest album to date, and somehow it fits in seamlessly. I'm surprised it's not bigger in the mainstream. Now, granted, the reason it's not higher on this list is because I really wish the arena rock side got a bit more exposure. The theatricality is so good, I want more of it. And we do have to compare to the genuine near classics that Marianas Trench released with Masterpiece Theater and Astoria. And no, it's not better than either of those albums, but still, mid-tier Marianas Trench is better than the vast majority of its competition. Why is this not getting all the radio play again, even in Canada? Come on! Number 7. So of the albums on this list, this is the one of which I'm the most cautious to put here, because it's from a genre where I don't have a ton of depth or experience. Hell, I was only really turned on to this band through a live show at a festival last year that I kind of stumbled into. And yet...
I felt afraid and ashamed, I felt anything at all. I felt you panicking, your shuddering, your catastrophic fall.
La Dispute is the band that I think of when I say I might actually be able to get into post-hardcore. And what amazes me is how I'd argue this project's actually getting overlooked. Yeah, it's more spare and distant and atmospheric, and it demands patience for its incredibly raw moments to hit as hard as they should, but that's what happens when you're on the sidelines with someone dealing with real emotional trauma and the insane emotional complexities that comes with that relationship. And normally projects like this, I would have to be in the right mood in order to process it and the very specific placement of its emotionality, but between the amazingly textured poetry and the intricacies of the mix and its balance, it's an album that can create such a mood, and that's a dangerous power indeed. I've had more than my fair share of complicated, brooding moments in 2019, don't think about that too much, and La Dispute has soundtracked some of the darkest of them, and while I reviewed this with my buddy the rock critic, aka Crash Thompson, and I have no idea how much it'll hold up for him, this was a band that is opening a door for me and then pulling me on through. And honestly, I might be along for the ride. But since we're at the halfway point, how about a couple more songs that deserve attention from projects that did not make this list? From Wasteland, baby, Sunlight by Hose.
First and fierce a firm inside of sunlight, sunlight, sunlight.
From Sucker Punch, Sight of You by Sigrid. From It's Real, Another Dimension by X Hex.
You and me in another dimension.
From Chekhov's Gun, Actually Happening by Last Summer.
These are not just words from the mind of a right to imagine. These are never seen from the film, this is actually happening.
From When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? When the Party's Over by Billie Eilish. From Stronger Than the Truth, In His Mind by Reba McEntire.
In his mind.
From Guns, featuring Denmark Vesey, Box of Wheaties by Gwele Chris.
I'm flipping for the go-go, I'm putting me on a box of Wheaties. I hold away, these haters need me on a box of Wheaties.
And finally, from Ventura, featuring Andre 3000 again, Come Home by Anderson .Paak. And now we're on to the second half of this list. Let's get started with number 6. This is another project where a part of me, it just has to compare it to what came before, especially as I would not argue it does more of the same just as well. But at the same time, though... Look, at this point, I am stunned that Saor just stuck the landing again. I love the blend of atmospheric black metal and Celtic folk of Guardians back in 2016, one of my favorite albums of that year, but the fact that this band could resurrect damn near the same formula for just a couple of songs here and remain this melodically satisfying with even better lyrics than I think they will get credit, it's a wonder to behold. Now, I'll admit the majority of this just won me over on melodies alone across the pipes and the strings and the surging guitars, and just speak to a part of my soul that I'm certain is not part of my cultural heritage at all. I don't even think any of my background comes from the British Isles, but the level of progressive but organic flow across this album, it sings to the heartstrings in a way that I have not heard replicated anywhere, both in Celtic folk or black metal. And it's one reason I will continue to put Saor on this list, even if it might be a slightly lesser entry. It's so damn unique in its sound and melodic power that I'm not sure there is an easy substitute. And yeah, for this album, high praise indeed. Number 5. When I found this project on Bandcamp, I had no expectations it would wind up this good or this high on the list, at least at first. It's the debut of an act that has built a little bit of buzz in the indie scene of their home country, but nothing on this side of the Atlantic, with a brand of indie folk rock that you could argue has long been out of fashion, and yet...
Gonna save me, save me, save me. Gonna save me, save me.
You know, Wiaca was the sort of project that hit me like a bolt of lightning, taking all my usual distrust for acoustic Mumford-esque grooves and the willowy vocals, and then pairing them with some of the best melodic hooks of this year. Sundays is another band that I think has serious crossover potential from the remarkably well-balanced mix. Seriously, the bass lines in this album will not get enough credit, to the very solid lyrical poetry, to a thematic arc that actually deconstructs the good guy love story in a way that doesn't come across as preening or self-serving. And when half the album could be star singles in their own merit, that's an incredible plus, especially for a debut. Yeah, it gets a little bit sleepy and kind of low-key at points, but that's a love-struck emotional balance for which I would argue the band does deserve some credit, and for once it actually feels earned. Again, this was a Bandcamp fluke for me, and I honestly didn't expect it to happen, but Sundays, they delivered one of the best debut albums of 2019, and in Just World, we will hear a hell of a lot more from this group. Number 4. Okay, look, I gave you all plenty of warning last year. You're out of excuses.
I don't even like the old Kanye. You deleted it, but I got the screenshot. You can't tell me shit. All my tattoos are brand new. You can't tell me shit. I see the timestamp on the photo. You can't tell me shit.
So I honestly struggled a bit where to place Sage Francis and B. Dolan's much-hyped collaborative project, which might have sacrificed some of their fiery polemics and straightforward hooks of their debut EP for more diverse song structures, a wider instrumental palette, some terrific guest performances, and literally some of the funniest and yet most insightful hip-hop of 2019. It's a rare balance to behold when you got songs that are so overstuffed with wit and phenomenal comedic timing, to say nothing of more quotable lines than any project I heard this year, but also show the sort of challenging societal commentary that might even hit some fans deeper than they expect. There's a lot of nuance between the lines. No, it's not quite as dark or mind-blowing as either man's best on their own, but when you're talking about two men in emo rap who have delivered legit classics, and yet with this, they found the happy medium. And while the album might bait expectations, it is fun as all hell. And the majority of you bitching that hip-hop has been slow or underwhelming in 2019 who haven't heard this album, yeah, fix that. But before we get to our final 3, let's have 8 more songs that deserve some attention from albums that did not make this list. From No Geography by the Chemical Brothers.
About leaving it all behind. Remember, no geography.
From Amidst the Chaos, Poetry by Dead Men by Sarah Bareilles.
Coffee stirring in the cinnamon while you read me poetry by dead men.
From Divided by Darkness, Angel and Abyss by Spirit Adrift. From Dedicated, The Sound by Carly Rae Jepsen.
I don't need the words, I want the sound, 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 sound.
From I Am Easy to Find, Oblivions by The National.
Still got my
From Zoo, featuring Kiddo Marv, Wish by Denzel Curry.
You might be the nigga that's gon' probably want it now. I'ma take her home only using one liner.
From A Different Kind of Human, The River by Aurora.
And you let the river run walk high. And you let the river run walk high.
And finally, from Too Mean to Die, Settle for Being Used by Carly Drift.
Settle for being used.
You know what? We're almost there, folks. So let's get down to number 3. So there are actually a lot of debut acts on this list. I realize that. And while I might not have been aware of the full hype going into this one, I did kind of know it was there. I also had pretty high expectations given the pedigree of the affiliated acts and the team behind him and the producer. But man, I did not expect him to succeed like this.
On down between the country, where dear lay along the road.
So I've long held the opinion that the best country albums accumulate a pretty healthy body count, and Ian Noe's Between the Country is perhaps one of the most gristly, textured, and gut-wrenching projects I have heard from the genre in recent years. It takes some serious stones to go as dark as this project does, not flinching from old-school outlaw fables and storytelling to then the fading waste of middle America where said fables are all they can really hold on to. It's a bleak project, make no mistake about it. Which is weird for me to say given how infectious it can be. The melodies are rooted in old school sounds but never feel like a blatant throwback, and the production by Dave Cobb is damn near perfect in giving them and Ian Noe the right space to breathe and hit. Where gunslingers, they might get cornered and trains might derail and a bridge collapse, but he's gonna make those songs love songs all the same. I would say there is a certain hangdog charm to this album, but it actually runs deeper than that. There's an organic core and intensity that makes these tunes so damn compelling. It almost feels reminiscent of the same feel I get from like very early 90s Nick Cave. He commands the room just simply by his presence. Yeah, you know what? I'm not sure what the future holds for Ian Noe because I can see mainstream Nashville just running screaming in the other direction. But yeah, if you haven't heard it, this is something special. Number 2. On the flip side, this EP is the sort of project I'm actually a little bit stunned it hasn't blown up in the mainstream just yet. The sound, it's there. The unique presentation, it's there. The hooks are there. All you need is the right push. And you know what? Everyone thinks I discovered this from Vanoss Gaming, but no, folks, I said in the review, this came from my continued and altogether questionable listening to the Joe Budden podcast, and by now, you should all know who they are.
You deserve what you like. I don't even care about the cost. I came here just to break you off.
At this point, Emotional Oranges have so firmly built a potent niche that it's not a question of if they will become big, it's when. Not only are they working the mixed gender R&B pairing, they're integrating that dynamic into the writing. And not just that, it's also mature and progressive and remarkably challenging in its emotionality. And when you couple it with organic grooves, a wealth of layered guitar, and killer hooks, look, R&B does not have to be this wise and intelligent as this EP is in order to get success, but the fact that Emotional Oranges are already there, it speaks insane volumes about their long-term potential. Nearly every song here is a standout, not content to just nestle within one smoked-out trap groove that a lot of R&B has just sank into in recent years. And you know what? If they keep up the momentum, you're going to be hearing more than just one volume, that's for damn sure. As it is, this is some of the best R&B that I've probably heard in the 2010s. What could be better? And finally, number 1. Really, ever since I heard it, the bar was set. Baton was laid down a couple years ago, has finally been picked up, and I'm not sure there was an act that's come close. And yeah, we're going back to indie country for this one, because if you're talking about names that you will want to have heard of yesterday,
Traveling Mercies out on that road. Traveling Mercies, may love bring you home.
so yes, I'll admit I was one of those guys who got a little bit exasperated when Casey Musgraves left her darker, more charged side of country with Same Trailer Different Park for the warmer traditional affectations of pageant material, and then the pop country of Golden Hour. Don't get me wrong, I like both of those albums, but they didn't hit that emotive nerve that truly resonated that I know Casey Musgraves could deliver. Hell, her husband, Rustin Kelly, managed to hit it with Dying Star more than she did last year. But Emily Scott Robinson, she's in a class by herself, even if you can make the comparison, because not only did she not have the major label backing support, production, and co-writers that Casey had at her best, Robinson can go toe-to-toe with a project like Traveling Mercies. And I'd argue she might actually be better overall. The attention to the smallest production details is stunning. The lyricism can get as dark as, well, the rest of the indie country on this list, but also have the versatility to bring a light touch, the variety and flair that doesn't need to nestle within the cutesy turn of phrase. They might show up here, but there's more lived-in experience, a consistent and powerful sense of empathy, and a string of terrific hooks that will do more than that for her. Again, this came out of nowhere from me, and if it wasn't for the indie country blogosphere rightly losing their minds over this, I probably wouldn't have heard it. And you probably wouldn't have heard it either. But right now, you know what, folks? It is the album to beat in 2019. Traveling Mercies by Emily Scott Robinson, thus far the best project released this year. Now we got 6 months to go. I can see Freddie Gibbs and Madlib on the horizon. I can hear that competition. They got a long road ahead of them. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Spectrum Pulse. I would love to hear what other albums that you guys think would make your list down in the comments below. You also can find all the social media stuff in the description. And I'll see you next time.
Out on that